Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are still at the r/nosleep subreddit and we are looking at a post submitted by original pilot 770. It says, "My dad insisted on redoing the electrical. I wish he hadn't." Alright, let's get down to it. I didn't want my father at the meeting. I needed to say this first because later, when I couldn't stop thinking about what we found, I kept coming back to this. If he hadn't been there, if he hadn't insisted on opening up more of the wall, I would have lived in the apartment not knowing. I would have been fine. The renovation was supposed to be simple. The flat was old, one of those village houses in the new territories that have been divided and redivided over the decades. The kind where you can see the history of Hong Kong's housing crisis in the layers of paint on the walls. My dad and I had saved for years. We were going to redo the kitchen, update the electronics, and make it ours. My dad is an engineer, retired now, but the type who never really stops. When I mentioned we were redoing the wiring, he talked about specifications and load calculations for 40 minutes. Then he asked to come to the meeting with the renovation company. I said no. My husband asked me gently a few times over the days whether my father's presence might be helpful. Technical knowledge, a second pair of eyes. I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would be different this time. The foreman's name was Mr. Lau. He was around 50. Patient in the way of someone who has learned that arguing with clients costs more than it saves. He walked with us through the flat, showing where the new sockets would go, where they needed to run cable. For the kitchen, he said, we can put the wiring through the cabinet space where cabinet space here saves you from retiling. I looked at the cabinets. They were old but functional. The wiring would be hidden inside the plastic conduit, tucked against the back wall, invisible once the doors were closed. That's fine, I said. My father made a sound, a small exhalation, almost theatrical. The conduit, he said. What brand? Mr. Lau told him it was a Chinese brand, functional, standard, a type used in 1,000 buildings across the city. My father said, going downhill like a river. You know, Hong Kong used to use British fittings, proper standards. Now it's all mainland products. This is why there are so many fires. Mr. Lau's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift behind his eyes. A calculation of how difficult this job was going to be. Bah, I said, it's fine. My father ignored me. He walked to where the section of the kitchen wall had already been opened for inspection. The old plaster pulled away to reveal the cavity behind. He reached in and pinched the plastic conduit that held the existing wiring. Look at this, he said. Feel how soft this is. A rat could chew right through it. We don't have rats, I said. You don't know you have rats until you have rats. Mr. Lau cleared his throat. We can use a higher grade conduit, European certified. It's more expensive, but how much? They negotiated. I stood by the window and looked out at the hills, at the green going gray in the winter light behind me. My father's voice rose and fell, questioning the tensile strength of various plastics, the flammability ratings, the safety standards of a dozen countries. I heard Mr. Lau agreed to bury the cables inside the wall instead of running them behind the cabinets. I heard myself agreeing to pay for a few tiles. I was embarrassed. I'm still embarrassed. Writing this now, but that feeling had been replaced by something else, something that sits heavier. Because of my dad's insistence to bury the wiring, they had to open up more of the walls. A section in the kitchen that hadn't been touched for decades, according to Mr. Lau. The plaster was older, a different composition than the patches and repairs elsewhere. I wasn't there when they found it. Mr. Lau called me at work, and something in his voice made me leave early. When I arrived, the flat was quiet. Mr. Lau was standing in the kitchen with two of his workers. They had stopped. Tools rested on the floor, abandoned in the middle of tasks. The hole in the wall was about a meter wide, half a meter tall. The edges ragged where they pulled the plaster away. Behind it, there was a small recess. It's not a proper cavity, but a gap where the wall didn't quite meet the original structure. The kind of imperfection you find in old buildings, spaces that exist by accident. On the floor in front of the hole sat a child's backpack. It was red, or had been once. The color had faded into something closer to rust, mottled with the gray-white bloom of midnights. The fabric was still intact, though it was a strange thing. It should have rotted, decades in a wall cavity, and it should have fallen apart, but it sat there, small and solid, like something awaiting. We didn't open it. Mr. Lau said, "I thought you should see. Maybe call someone." "Call who?" He didn't answer. My dad was there too. I hadn't noticed him at first, standing in the corner. For once, he wasn't talking. I walked over to the backpack. Up close, I could see it was old. The design, the shape, and the straps. The plastic buckles, 90s, maybe earlier. I thought about what could have been happening in Hong Kong then. Handover as anxiety. People leaving, people staying, family making choices. "There's probably a dead rat inside," I said. "That's all." I wanted there to be a rat. I was ready for a rat. The small horror of bones and dried skin. Something dead but explicable. Something that would make my father nod and say, "See, I told you about the conduit." I unzipped the bag. No rat. Inside, there were textbooks. 3 of them, the kind children use in primary school, with the multiplication tables printed on the back cover. They were damp but intact. The pages were swollen and wavy. There were also pencil cases, plastic, cartoon characters in front. I didn't recognize them. Inside, a few pencils worn down to stubs, an eraser in the shape of a strawberry. There was a Happy Meal toy, still in its plastic wrapper. I didn't know what promotion it was from, but the mascot on the packing looked old. A vision of the character I half remembered from my own childhood, and there was a school uniform folded neatly in the bottom of the bag. White shirt, navy pinafore, small, very small. Mr. Lau made a sound behind me. Maybe a child left it, he said. Children forget things. Someone put it in the wall during the construction as a joke. I wanted to believe him. I nodded, because I wanted to believe him. But I had opened one of the exercise books. It was English homework, filled with blank sentences, the kind where you practice grammar by completing phrases. The child's handwriting was careful, effortful. The letters formed with the deliberate concentration of someone still learning. My mother is dash. The blank had been filled in, not here. I wanted to dash the blank, go outside. The man is very dash angry. I feel dash when I am at home. The word in the blank was hard to read. The pencil was pressed deep into the paper, grooved it. I tilted the page towards the light. Quiet. It may be scarred. The letters were smudged. I couldn't tell. I turned the page. More sentences. My favorite food is dash. Nothing. When I grow up, I want to be dash. This one was left blank. The child had started to write something. There was a mark, the beginning of a letter, and then stopped. The next sentence was the last one on the page. I live in dash, the wall. I closed the book. Mr. Lau was watching me. What does it say? Grammar exercises, I said. Just homework. I don't know why I lied. Maybe because I hadn't processed it yet. Maybe because I couldn't still tell myself it was nothing. A child being dramatic, making up stories, the way children do. I live in the wall. A joke, a fantasy, children writing strange things. But the backpack had been inside the wall, and the uniform was so small. We called the realtor. They had no records of any incident, any child, anything unusual in the flat's history. The building had changed hands so many times, records were incomplete. We could have called the police. Sometimes I think about that. Whether I should have insisted, but what would I have reported? Old homeworks, forgotten bag. There was nothing conclusive, nothing that paved anything that proved that anything had happened. My father, who had been so loud about wiring and safety standard, said almost nothing for the rest of the day. On his way out, he stopped at the door. You should have them seal it back, he said. Don't leave it open. I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. He just looked at the hole in the wall, at the dark space behind it, and then he left. We finished the renovation. New wiring, European brand, buried properly in the walls. New tiles in the kitchen. Everything up to code. I kept the backpack. I don't know why. It's in the closet now, in a plastic bag, and I haven't opened it since. Day. Sometimes at night I think about the homework. I think about a child somewhere filling in blanks with a pencil, writing answers that might have been cries for help, or might have been something at all. I think about how the bag ended up inside the wall, whether it was hidden or lost or left behind, whether someone put it there on purpose, whether someone was trying to say something and no one heard. I think about the sentence that was left unfinished. When I grow up, I want to be dash. And I think about the last sentence. I live in the world. I tell myself it was a child's imagination. I tell myself there's an explanation, but the uniform was so small and it folded so neatly, and the bag was in the wall for so long, and no one ever came looking for it. No one ever came looking. Last week, I heard something in the kitchen, a rustling behind the new tiles. My first thought was rats. We have been leaving traps, but we haven't caught anything. My second thought was something I don't want to write down. I told my husband it's just the building settling. Old buildings make sounds. He agreed. We don't talk about the backpack. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the flat, I stand in the kitchen and I listen. And I swear I know how this sounds. I know. But I swear I can hear something back there. Not scratching. Not a rat. Something quieter. Like pages turning. Alright, guys, that's the end of this story. I hope you enjoy it. And until next time, more interesting stories. I'll see you guys. Bye.